This is not a normal podcast. Look around. We're on an island in the James River in downtown Richmond. Sharps Island, it's called. People camp here, fish here, party here. For over 200 years, Richmonders have built structures on this island. Inevitably, those structures were washed away, but the Richmonders, like myself, keep coming back, keep building, trying to gain a foothold. Why? For us, the water that surrounds Sharps Island isn't a barrier, it's a threshold, a doorway to a magical place. This acre of rock and sand surrounded by the city, yet somehow completely secluded. On this podcast, our guests have to get in a boat and leave the world behind. I hope you'll come with them. It's this low tide, there's rocks everywhere, it's just currents. When a high tide comes in, it kind of pushes all these currents back upstream, and it's like paddling across a lake. All right, go ahead and paddle. No, that's all you're doing is providing, forward thrust. I do the, directing in the back. So yeah, you just bring me up enough to hop out. Perfect. That's good. Boom. You did it.
I am glad I changed shoes.
Yeah, perfect. Claire, Josh. All right, because the tide is coming in, so I'm gonna bring this thing all the way up.
This is cool.
First time.
Yeah, I've always been curious. Well, what goes on out here?
Yeah. I don't know if you guys saw, but we were watching one of the fishermen, and Osprey got caught in the line. I guess it looked like he was able to bring his line in, so unless he...
I saw it take off, so I think...
Okay, did it take off? Yeah, that was kind of crazy. A lot of traffic on the water.
Yeah.
A lot of fish in the river.
That's pretty cool.
I got it. You might actually be able to use. I know we were talking. There's like hundreds of fish swimming around us when Tim and I got out. Like just full. It was crazy shad.
Yeah. I think people try to snag them too. Like they get so thick through here. You saw what that guy was doing, reeling in like that.
Right.
He's trying to snag them.
So like foul hook them. But they also, you'll see guys with cast nets.
Yep.
Where they throw out the net. So,
what a beautiful spot, man. This is great.
Welcome to Sharps Island, dude. Isn't this amazing?
Yeah.
Low tide gives you the sense too, and the river's down at 4.7. You start to get a sense for all the places where kids swim, and obviously it gets, by July it'll be 4 or even less. But yeah, pretty cool, huh?
Yeah. And this is Vauxhall Island right here, right?
No.
Or no, this is one of the others.
So that's Mayo.
That's Mayo. Okay, that's Mayo.
This is Devil's Kitchen.
Devil's Kitchen.
And that's Shad Island.
Got it.
That's the one when you're walking along. That's the long one when you're walking along the flood wall.
Okay.
That you look at.
I love that view of the river from the flood wall towards that island.
Yeah. If you come up here, you can see there's a rapid called Triple Drop.
Yeah.
Right through there. Here, if you come up, the Triple Drop comes. And the soda water, do you know about that place?
Yep, up to Alabama, we were just talking about that this morning.
Up through there.
Cool.
Catfish Alley is up through there. If you know about that.
Wow.
But yeah, so that's the tip of Mayo Island. I mean, the parking lot is still, you just can't.
Yeah.
The parking lot ends right there, basically.
So much of that'll be cleared too.
Yeah.
The tree canopy there is real. A lot of that's invasive, ailanthus and overgrown stuff. So when they do their restoration of Mayo, that'll be a little clearer. You'll be able to see through a little more.
Definitely want to talk about that. All right, welcome back to our Island in the Stream. Today we're joined by Josh Stutz. He's the executive director of the Friends of the James River Park. Josh became the first ever executive director, right, of the Friends group?
Yep, that's right.
In, summer of 2021?
Yep, that was when they'd completed the master plan a little earlier than that, and one of the first items on the master plan was to hire an executive director to sort of shepherd that plan and grow the organization.
And I know, because I used to, be the outdoors columnist for the Times-Dispatch, so I would write about the Friends and the work they would do. And it was one of many kind of similar groups. There was J-Rock and others who did kind of nibbled at the edges of different park challenges. And I remember thinking a couple of years ago, that's a big deal. To be able to hire an executive director. So what has that challenge been like? I'm curious, sort of, not personally, but professionally, what's the challenge like being the first executive director versus coming into an organization that's already kind of fully formed and has a kind of strong foundation.
Yeah, it's been really cool. I've spent a lot of time in my career working in fundraising roles, doing and programming as well. I've been in nonprofits for about 15 years or so. I went to grad school for nonprofit management, so I have the sort of educational and professional background that fit for this job, and also a love of the park. So when they hired me, I think that's what they were looking for. Less so, they didn't want a conservationist, they didn't want a park management specialist. They were looking for somebody to grow and build an organization and sort of help feed the nonprofit infrastructure around the park. Because like you mentioned, there's a good number of organizations all sort of coming at it from different angles.
And it's not like you guys manage the park. The city manages the park.
That's correct. Yep, it's the city's park, and so nobody really has any more authority than what the city grants them to be involved, and that's been, for us, we've been very fortunate to be included in a lot of big decisions and a lot of the way the park's taken care of, and the Friends have grown from about a $200,000 a year organization before I started to the fiscal year that's going to end in July. We'll wrap up with about $1 million in money raised and money spent this year.
That's your budget. That was your budget. This
just
year.
Right around there. Yep. So we're gonna, and all that money goes back into the park. Yeah. It pays for my time. It pays for Shauna's time doing administrative work for us. But other than that, everything's spent within the park. Yeah. One full time, one part time.
Okay. And so I would imagine with that kind of increase in budget, your increase like in programming or in these sort of services the Friends offer has grown a ton. How do you decide? I would imagine though, I mean, that's a 5-fold budget increase in 4 years. Well, how do you decide like what to prioritize? Like, what do the Friends do now that they weren't doing 4 years ago?
That's a great question. I think for us, the most important decision that we've made over the last couple of years is to take a look at the park staff and the City of Richmond staff who manage the park as our number one customer.
Okay.
So when we think of people we serve, yes, it's park users, yes, it's Richmonders and people who love the park, but it's absolutely where our ideas come from for the things that we fund comes straight out of the 20 or so people that work in the James River Park system every day, from the superintendent on down. We have things like the Superintendent's Fund, which is roughly $50,000 a year that the superintendent can use for whatever he or she likes. That covers a lot of emergency needs, does a lot of fun morale trips for the staff, things like that. We have a monthly, we buy the staff breakfast every month to help build morale. So we really invested in building a relationship with that team in order to get them the tools they need to do their jobs well. So I look at it as working directly with park staff to identify and solve problems in the park. And that's led to some really cool stuff. Little things like helping buy the mini excavator recently, or any of the other equipment we bought. I think we bought
for like trail work and
correct,
that kind of thing?
Exactly. Yep. Trails will come tell us, hey, this piece of equipment will help us get our jobs done better. And we'll kind of piece together with other nonprofits different amounts of money that can get kicked in to buy it. Or sometimes we buy it outright. A couple years ago, or last year I guess it was, the education department wanted a new bike trailer, and they identified that as a need. So we went out and asked them what they wanted, and that was something they wanted to be able to support programming. And we went to the community foundation and found the grant to be able to do that, to make that happen. So equipment purchases, vehicle purchases. We are also funding all of the invasive species removal in the park.
Oh wow!
So
that's a big project.
That's huge, and so that team recently came on our payroll. They were contractors before, but we actually have them as Friends of James River Park employees now that are on our payroll.
How many of them are there?
There are 3 full-time and 1 part-time.
And these are people that literally wake up every day. When they go to work, they're removing invasive species or managing. They're
managing the process. So they're making decisions about what we're doing where, and developing plans for invasive removal, and then they're working with themselves and with volunteers to actually do the work. That's work that at one time we thought would eventually fall in the city's profile, but we were grateful for the opportunity to bring it on ourselves, and that's work we're going to continue to do. So it's probably about a third of our budget spent on that invasive removal and what we call natural resource management planning, which is this process we're doing, we engaged in this year. It's a good chunk of our budget this year is actually working with consultants from a team called Biohabitats out of Baltimore. It's about a 2-year project to catalog and develop plans for natural resource management in the James River Park system.
So beyond just invasives.
Correct.
All natural resources that are in the park.
Yep, they've broken the park into 96 separate management zones. So they chunked it up into these little 5-6 acre parcels.
Units.
And the park staff and different stakeholders we engaged, folks from the Invasive Plant Task Force, we all looked at each one and set a goal for restoration for each of those parcels. And this plan, the full plan will come out in July or around there, late summer, we'll actually have a step-by-step sort of guide for getting us to those management goals in each area.
Of those 96, how many would you describe as fully restored right now?
Not very many. Very few are in a condition that we wouldn't want to improve. I think Williams Island, the top of Belle Isle, there's a few places that have really nice conservation work being done.
Okay.
But basically, so much of the James River Park system has been industrial in the past.
Right.
And that's taken it away from what it would be naturally.
Right.
So the idea that we'd ever get it back to some sort of pristine nature that was here before civilization is probably off the table for most of the James River Park.
Right.
But we can get it to something that's got a functioning ecosystem, that's starting to recover, that we're seeing less invasive plants in, and that people can use, because I think that's the other important part about the natural resource management planning is areas where we're not looking to do full restoration are areas we can develop better recreational amenities.
Yeah,
so there's certain areas, so it's sort of developing a map of the park that lets us know, helps us make decisions about where recreation is going to go in the future, or helps the city make decisions about that, and we play a role in that. And that's gives us cover when we look at things like the Belle Isle projects that we're talking about, things like the nature play space on Belle Isle and a new pump track and different things we're looking at for Belle.
Right.
Those are in areas that used to be steel mill.
Right.
And then a bridge was built through.
And now they're under a bridge.
And now they're exactly. So they're seen as having low conservation value today, and the effort it would take to do a restoration there is so extreme that it's probably better for our resources to activate that space and use it as recreational space, because we already can't get out of the shadow. The bridge isn't going anywhere. And all that pavement down below isn't going anywhere. So that's how the natural resource management plan will be used in the future, and I'm really excited about seeing those results, and that we could help pay for that.
Yeah, I would imagine that makes it's easier to sort of get people fired up for all right, here's the goal. This is your, unit. Here's what we got to do, and you're going to see progress. Right away in some of these units, right?
I think so. We'll have kind of a triage list of things we can go do. What I think is also really helpful with the natural resource management plan is we're going to understand what areas are kind of too far gone to save, because there'll be some areas of the park where we,
where give me one of those.
I think of areas, no one's gonna like this answer, but I think Texas Beach is an area where there's a lot of tree canopy that's in danger
because of vines
and different invasive plants that have happened there. It's a really difficult site to work in, and since the bridge closed, we haven't been able to officially get down there and do any work, so things have been sort of let go for a few years in a row now. So I worry about that's an area that's probably going to be identified as a space where it's not worth putting more money into for that tree canopy because of the work it would take to get it done. But that doesn't mean we're writing it off entirely. It just means we're going to treat it differently than an area that is still savable, and
we can use these resources to do this.
Yeah, if we had all the money in the world, the James River Park would look totally different. We'd be able to fight it a little more differently, but we have to work with the resources we have, which are about $1 million a year from the city and $1 million a year that we raise. I mean, that'll grow. With 3 million park users a year, it can only grow, right? We've got
that was where I wanted to go next. I remember I started writing about the park for the Times-Dispatch. It would have been in late 2007, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but visitation had to be, certainly was well under 1 million, and now it's, what is it, 3 million?
That's the number we use. It's 2.5 to 3 million is the number that people bounce around a lot.
I mean, that is insane.
Yeah, the counting visits, and I would say it's visits, not visitors. So it's not 3 million individual people. It's some people coming back all 365 days.
I walk my dogs all the time.
Yeah. So you're probably 300 visits. Yeah. And a lot of people are like that. We've got a great base here. What I think is interesting about that number, too, is it breaks out roughly into thirds, where about a third of park users are from the city of Richmond residents, a third are from the counties, and a third are tourists, folks who come from all over the rest of the country. And I don't...
That's hundreds of thousands of people visiting the park from outside the area entirely.
Absolutely, and I think a good amount of that can be attributed to some of the outdoor recreation events we have, things like River Rock, which bring people to town. But that's also, we've talked to Richmond Tourism about this, the Tourism Bureau, about the folks that come here. A lot of tourists who come to Richmond, they're not necessarily coming for the James River Park system, but they spend some time down here. They walk across Browns Island over to the Teapot or over to Belle Isle. Used to be able to walk along Pipeline and down around that area, but people are visiting downtown. They see this beautiful river. They're learning what Richmond has to offer, and the James River Park system being right here is such an important asset for driving tourism.
Yeah, and I would imagine, I think about those people specifically, setting a new narrative, right? Like if you don't know anything about Richmond, but you're here for your kids' volleyball tournament, and all of a sudden you go down and you walk across Browns Island and go across the Teapot, and you're like, holy crap, like this place is amazing. Like you can't, it just, to get to have that kind of experience, or to go spend time on Belle Isle and watch, raft trips come through Hollywood Rapid, right? Like you're just not seeing that in any other American city.
Yeah, I think that's what's important is the river really is the heart of Richmond, and the James River Park System is really the heart of the river in Richmond. And folks having access to the river here along the trails and all the great green space we have really is helping paint, I think for out-of-town visitors, like you said, a great picture of why Richmond is a special place. And I think Richmonders think that as well. I mean, the number of folks locally coming out and fighting for this thing and helping us take care of it. We get a little better every year towards that culture of sustainability that we want to see. I think that comes over time. The James River Park Systems, the first parcels are roughly 50 years old now, and that's not that old in terms of parks. I mean, we're in a really cool spot to be doing some of the work we're doing and getting more Richmonders involved in helping us take care of it.
But 2.5 to 3 million people or visits is a lot of visits. Is there that risk of the park being loved to death?
I think that's a thing we hear a lot about, and I think that I would tie that back to the natural resource management planning as something we're trying to help. If we do good planning, we can help prevent it. We shouldn't be doing any work to try and limit the number of people that come to the park. It's public space, and the cat's out of the bag. You can't.
So you don't envision parking fees, entrance fees?
I mean, I certainly would love to. I think there's value in exploring something like that as like a way to help generate revenue. I don't know that I'm personally for it, but I think it's worth studying a little bit. I think the practicality of implementing it in the James River Park System would be difficult because it's so porous, which has been our challenge for, crime management and other issues in the park as well, is that there are 1,000 entry points and exit points.
How many parcels are there in the, 500 some acres is the park?
Yeah, roughly 600 acres, and I think it's like 11 official named parks. I can't remember what the exact number is,
but there's a million entry points.
And only so many of them are official. But if you look at things like the North Bank Trail or the Buttermilk, there's tons of access points through backyards, pony pasture as well. Tons of people have little pirate trails from their backyards right into the park. So
I walk underneath the Nickel Bridge to get onto the main trail. You walk underneath the bridge across the tracks, and you're in the park. That's not official.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard to control all of that. So I think, the idea of an entrance fee or an admissions fee, I think the better case for funding for the park long term is just to make the appeal that if it's worth something to you, help us take care of it. I think if you break down Richmond taxes, it's somewhere around $3 per household that actually makes it into the James River Park System, and that's just Richmond taxes. So if the James River Park System is more valuable to you than $3, that's where we come in as a source of the most efficient and effective way to impact the James River Park System is a donation to Friends of the James River Park. We could take that money and directly use it right alongside park staff. And so that's our long-term pitch to people is that, if it's worth $20 a year to you, that's not nothing to us. If enough people hit that critical mass of $5, $10, $20 a year, we're going to have the resources necessary to take care of this thing. And I think the fastest way to do that is through growing the nonprofit side of things. I think the city has a lot of priorities, a lot of great things they're trying to get done. But to expect the city to come in with another $1 million a year or $2 million a year, unless it's for capital projects like Mayo Island, which we can talk about as well.
Yeah, that was my next question.
I think to expect the city to do that, it's going to come at the expense of other parks and neighborhoods that aren't.
That also need green space.
Yeah, that also needs green space, haven't gotten the investment in the past, and don't have a community that can help take care of it the way the James River Park System does. So I'd hate to see that for us to fight for the city to fund the James River Parks more. It's not without growing the tax base. I think there's a strong case for it because your highest tax base lives along the river, and the people are buying more expensive properties and paying higher property tax because of the James River Park System. 100%. So there's absolutely a case for a greater economic impact of the park than people understand. But that money is only so much available, and cities are complicated. So to say, the James River Park System needs more money from the city is a really challenging and sort of complicated thing to figure out.
It's more complicated than that statement. So you mentioned Mayo Island. Where you're sitting, you can see Mayo Island if you're around the corner. And I don't know how many Richmonders know this, but that is now slated. Mayo Island, which used to be just a place you drove across. There's lots of different private uses over the years, is now slated to be a city park, part of the James River Park.
Yep,
right?
Mayo Island is the newest section of the James River Park system. The city's purchased it, and they're working on getting it under easement right now and recording a conservation easement for Mayo Island.
The mayor's budget. So all right, so we're in the middle of that budget process.
Yep.
The mayor, city council, they're hashing it out right now. Where do things stand with Mayo Island?
Yeah, so the mayor put in $16 million to get the park open by October of 2026, which is as a number they came up with based on how much it's going to take to do demo and this first round of restoration.
Right, there's buildings, there's asphalt,
They've got to rip out about 8 acres of impervious surface. They got to remove about 12 inches of soil across most of the island to meet the no-rise requirement for the flood control grant that the money they used to purchase the island had stipulations.
Right.
One of those stipulations was that it be restoration work be underway by October of 2026. So
just underway, not complete?
Not complete. It needs complete enough to be, so it needs to be open to the public, and the asphalt needs to be removed, the demo needs to be done.
So open to the public, though, is a lot of work has to happen between now and then.
A lot of work has to happen. So as long as that $16 million gets through and gets approved in the budget in a couple of weeks, and I think there's maybe a meeting about it today, and I've heard good things. Council sees the value in the project. From the latest reports I've been getting. I know there's some great questions to be asked about an expensive project like this, but if we can't get Mayo Island done on time, it's going to delay the bridge, and it's going to cost the city some money.
The new Mayo Bridge.
Correct.
Right.
And it's going to cost the city some money in the long run, because they'll get a chunk of money back if they can get by that October 2026 date, if they can have it open. So the plan now is to remove all the buildings, rip out as much of the impervious surface as they can, and start doing native planting across the island. They're going to build a trail that runs around the perimeter, so folks can come out and walk and enjoy the perimeter space on Mayo. But that's kind of going to be it for the first round.
Get a good look at Sharps.
Correct. Get a good look at Sharps Island.
Wave to them, yeah.
And so that's kind of the first round of what we're calling the interim park plan. And so there'll be more developments there on the other side of the bridge. Once the bridge is constructed, there'll be sort of another round of design work and maybe some more construction to sort of make the park more official. But for this first round, it's getting pollinators in the ground. They're going to perform natural space.
So there won't be any like boat put-ins or
initially
anything else in terms of hard infrastructure.
I believe the goal long term, and don't quote me on this, I guess I'm saying here, but
yeah, I mean, we have to quote you.
What I understand is that there may be a commercial takeout in the future, so an alternative option to 14th Street someplace. I've not been in those conversations. I just know that was talked about quite a bit in the beginning as something people want to see is a bigger takeout to take the place of 14th Street or as an alternative.
Take the pressure off 14th Street.
Yeah, exactly, as an alternative to 14th Street. I don't know where they landed with that. I don't think it's part of the interim park plan of what they'll have done by October of 2026. It's all very complicated with the island needs to be a floodable park on the other side of this. Yeah. So the island needs to not impact the floodwaters coming across it without, so there's a lot of different stipulations in these grants.
Designed exactly to allow floodwaters to pass through.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't think we'll have any buildings like this over there.
Right.
But
nothing that cool.
Yeah, and I think it'll be just natural space. People are going to love it. And the alternative is, if the $16 million doesn't come through, we really worry about what's going to happen over there in the meantime. If Parks and Rec has to rehash how they're going to do this, if they have to extend that deadline at all and kick it out any further, when's construction actually going to begin? What's happening over there in the meantime? Because if you have it
becomes a boondoggle.
Correct. Yeah, you have abandoned public space. People are going to find a way to occupy it, and they're not going to be occupying it with the good park use in the ways. So we can either have park users there helping maintain it by activating it, or we can just let nature take its course over there. To the extent that it's nature,
and people will squat there.
Will squat there, and we're starting to see it with the buildings. We're seeing more graffiti.
It's already happening.
We're seeing a lot of trash over there for an island that's technically uninhabited and no one's allowed to be there. There's a lot of human garbage that lands there. Man-made trash that lands around the island that isn't just simply thrown out of car windows on the bridge. It's all over the place. So and we see it because we do cleanups over there, and I worry that that's only going to get worse. And then what happens, the next big flood does come, all those buildings are still there, they end up in the river, all that pavement's still there, it gets all the trash gets pulled in. So I think I worry, I think the last time Mayo Island was underwater was 1996, and then about 30 years before that as well. So every 25 or 30 years, there's been this sort of event.
You know what? Just sitting where we are now, I don't want to talk about Mayo.
Sure.
You're going to give me a panic attack. Because if Mayo's underwater...
This is long underwater.
I've got real problems here, Josh. Yeah.
But I worry about that.
that
we're kind of due for a big flood event here in a way that we haven't been in a long time. And what that would do if the city can't get it open in time. And it'll be great on the other side because Mayo Island won't impact the flooding in the river and won't put stuff in the river. But until we get there, we got about 18 months, and it can be a park or it can be a parking lot.
All right, I want to talk about one other park parcel. Pipeline Walkway has been. I talked about this a little bit with Matt Perry, the Riverside Outfitters owner. To those who don't know, Pipeline Walkway is a park parcel. There's a pipe underneath the walkway that broke or had. It's a long story, but sewage was going into the river. They've now cut it off. But the problem is there's talk of shutting off the pipe, basically closing that down as a park unit, a James River Park unit, correct?
Yeah.
Where do things stand there? Because, people love Pipeline Walkway.
People love Pipeline. So, and just to acknowledge, Matt Perry is actually on my board of directors as well.
Okay.
So he's really, really tied in. He's a friend of the James River Park as well.
For sure.
And we like Matt and what he does down there.
Yeah, he was just giving us the dirt on how it all went down.
Yeah, so I think that's been a situation we've been keeping an eye on for a couple of years. I think the challenging part is that the way the James River Park system was built, mostly by a man named Ralph White over the course of 30 or 40 years that he was in charge of the James River Park system.
As my kids would say, he's the GOAT.
He's the GOAT.
Yeah.
We love Ralph.
Right.
There were a lot of things that flew in the 90s and early 2000s that don't hold up in a court of law in 2025.
Right.
And Pipeline, I think, was one of them. My understanding is that it was never officially part of the Parks and Rec portfolio.
Handshake deals.
It was handshake deals, and kind of a sign was erected at one point that called it with a little Parks and Rec logo on the bottom. But I don't know that to be officially anything. That there's no easement paperwork we can find that allows public access.
I've talked to Ralph about it. He'll be the first to tell you.
He stole it fair and square. Yeah. He told me he stole it fair and square.
Right. That's right.
And that's there was a place for that in getting us where we are, and I don't want to reject that legacy as it is what it is. Like, that's a very cool thing, and the James River Park system wouldn't happen without that attitude. I think the problem today, and the railroad's not wrong, there are safety concerns.
The CSX line goes over top of the pipe.
Correct.
Right.
And so it's land underneath the tracks, the way I understand it, is railroad's land.
Right.
And anything attached to their railroad trestles, like the pipe, is the railroad's property. And so DPU was granted an easement for access to the pipe, and DPU never enforced no trespassing across that easement.
Right.
So that's how it became sort of quasi-public access, as people just
through DPU.
Through the DPU's easement to access the pipe for maintenance.
Right. So now they've decommissioned the pipe.
Yes.
And in their minds,
they no longer hold that easement because they no longer need to access it.
Right.
And it goes back to the railroads, who doesn't want people under there for safety reasons. And they're not wrong. Stuff falls off the tracks. The ladder's a little sketchy. The walkway's narrow. If you ever try to get past somebody on there.
Yeah.
And then I think Pipeline also, because of it's a beautiful space, it does attract some nuisance behavior.
Yeah. Because it's hard to get to, and it's hidden a little bit. It's also one of the absolute coolest places on the river because of Pipeline Rapids, and
it's one of the only places in the park we find needles when we do cleanups too. I mean, it's got a seedy, dirty element, and I it's not everybody's experience down there, but what happens down there at night, and we hear about it from the neighbors who live right there.
Right.
It's a tough place to keep safe for park users, and frankly, there was a big discussion about it right after it happened. Even if it's not my favorite section of the park. It's beautiful, but it's not well taken care of by the people that use it.
Right.
And it attracts that nuisance behavior. A lot of trash build up down there. I think it's unfortunate that Richmond lost access to a public space and some connectivity on that side.
But do you think we will? There's unofficial access still. People are probably there right now.
You can't close the trail in Richmond. That's what we've always said. If you look at what happened. One of my first things on this job was July of 2021. I had just started, or maybe it was early August, a couple weeks on the job.
Right.
Pipeline had a huge burst, and feces were coming out of it. It was a combined sewer and stormwater pipe, and stuff was coming out of it left and right. And so we had put up barriers, caution tape with a sign explaining it's biohazard, whatever.
Right.
Maybe an hour later, that stuff was in the river.
Gone.
And so people were traipsing through then fecal matter to get to their favorite spot in the park because they didn't care that. And I think that's one of the challenges. We love that people love the park so much and they're park fanatics.
Right.
I think there's you can't really control people. And Texas Beach is the same way. That door was welded shut. First it was locks, and then it was welds, and people kept coming and cutting different things to get across a bridge that was condemned for safety reasons.
Right.
So my biggest concern with that was, yes, you cut the lock and you cut through it and went across, but the family behind you doesn't know that it's condemned and closed and is walking across it. And what if it had collapsed, and hurt somebody? Right. So I don't know. We've had a tough time closing trails in Richmond, and I think between DPU and the railroad, that's going to be their hardest issue down there.
So this is an ongoing. The future of Pipeline is still to be determined. From a does it stay a part of the park? And can you stop people from getting down there anyway?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to stop people from getting down there because they've demonstrated that. And I think there's a future where some concession can be made with the railroad, with some safety improvements, with some better access, possibly straight from sort of perpendicular access into the site, not across the catwalk. I don't think the catwalk's going to fly.
What about coming straight down from the bottom, the downstream tip of Browns Island?
Yep. So they talked about that with some railings around the pipes. There's some different things that I think could be done, but again, it's millions of dollars of improvements, and it's not something that's in any of the master plans, and so that's sort of what drives a lot of the big capital improvement projects. We've got things like the missing link that we're not getting to right away. We've got Mayo's Island. We've got all these projects, and while people love Pipeline, it would take a serious investment of cash and then some other reason to get it as a higher priority than the other projects. So I think if people are still using it and finding their own way to get down there, it is trespassing.
That might be
but I don't know who's
highest
enforcing
and best use at this point.
Yeah.
I remember I would talk to a police officer, a guy named Stacy Rogers. He was a bike cop who used to patrol the park. There was no park police at the time. There is no park police now, and if anything, I would imagine the police presence in the James River Park is maybe less than it was then. Or certainly there are no bike cops, or at least not dedicated the way he was, like every day patrolling the trails. Is that something we need? You talked about some of these negative uses, some of the things that happened. There was a shooting on Belle Isle over the winter.
Yeah, I think...
Do we need a park police?
I think there needs to be some presence for bad actors in the James River Park system. It's a city. You need protection from folks. I think in the James River Park system, we do have a lot of property theft, vehicle theft. That's more parking lot stuff. There's an issue with gunfire at 22nd Street that we are not quite sure how to address. You certainly don't want to send if what's happening at 22nd Street is in the night people are setting up at the tower and in the woods and just firing off guns into what they think's abandoned space because they aren't folks who understand the rules of gun safety very well.
Or don't care.
Yeah, or don't care. And so we get reports from residents there about gunshots late into the night, hundreds of gunshots some nights.
Jesus.
And you feel bad for RPD because people call the cops and if the police are going someplace where they know there's gunshots, where they know there's somebody with a gun, they have a specific type of response they have to take.
Right.
And that is going to result in a shooting. Like, that's going to trigger a violent incident, most likely. And so I sympathize. Like, there's not a real easy way to deal with that problem.
Yeah.
And so, we've talked about cameras and lighting and what do we do there. I think a more active police presence in the park would be a good thing in some ways. We don't want people being hassled over, smoking a joint on the rocks or whatever.
Right.
We would love to see
no
glass bottles, no breaking bottles, no graffiti would be really nice. I mean, the different things that we see that we wish there was a solution for, I think could all be resolved by better activation and getting the right types of people into the park to help us take care of it.
So, sort of along the same lines, maybe that's the answer. But if you could snap your fingers and change one thing in the park, what would it be?
Ooh.
One thing about the park.
Yeah, good question. I think I would. It's more about park user behavior than the park itself, but just the litter. I really wish people would get better about.
It just kills you to see that.
Taking out what they bring in.
Yeah.
It's such a simple thing.
Right.
You carried it in. It's lighter when you carry it out.
Right.
This shouldn't be hard. And we see people, dragging in coolers and Wawa bags, and on Belle Isle you'll see them walking around with a great blue heron just landed right there. Very cool.
That's cool.
But you'll see them walking, a case of Twisted Tea, and apparently Twisted Teas get real heavy when they're empty because we find them on the ground all over Belle Isle.
Can't possibly carry them out.
Can't possibly carry them back out, or use any of the dozens of garbage cans we have around. I mean, they get full, but you can still leave your trash in a way that isn't just on the rocks. So something kills me about you go to a pristine spot in the park on a pony pasture, right? Name any spot with nice rocks along the river.
Yeah.
You go there, you'll see evidence of a wildfire and a bunch of beer cans,
right.
and all the Wawa trash and McDonald's trash
right.
and things that they hauled out there with them,
right.
just left behind.
Right.
And I just wish there was a way for us to get to people and really have them participate. You see the value in someplace so natural. Why would you leave it worse than you found it?
It's always blown my mind.
I think people should be trying to live in a way that if everybody lived the way that they live, the
right.
world wouldn't get worse.
Right.
But if everybody littered, the world would absolutely get worse. So
right.
what are you doing? So if there was one thing I could change, it's that. I think the graffiti is up there as well. It's
the same.
It's natural space. I really wish people wouldn't use nature as their canvas. There are plenty of structures around town that are man-made, that are abandoned. You can practice your artwork, but when people graffiti on the dry rocks, which is such a cool geological feature,
right.
we don't need to see your dumb scribbles on it. That kills me.
On the actual granite.
On the actual river rocks. You went out there and spray painted them, and because the rocks are porous, that spray paint's essentially there forever.
Right.
It sinks in a bit. There's not a really effective way to remove it. We paint over it, and then they come paint over where we painted over. And so it's a constant battle. The resources we waste on trash management and graffiti removal in the park, if people would just not do those things,
right.
we'd be in a better shape. I think Dead Rock is an interesting case. I do think there's a very strong case that it breeds other graffiti and that we shouldn't allow it, because if you go there's
right.
graffiti on all the rocks around it. I think it's sort of always been officially grandfathered in because of Ralph White, and it's sort of its culture there. But right. We can go there right now and there's graffiti all around it, I guarantee. So it's people see it and they think, I'm free to do this here, and that's an issue.
There's never been a time where there isn't graffiti there, right?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, before, what was it, the 90s when it showed up? I think it was like in the 90s.
Yeah. So I don't know the exact timeline on Dead Rock, but I see the value in keeping something like that. That's sort of culturally, it's a Richmond landmark, and I'm certainly not trying to sanitize the James River Park system in the way that maybe people think we are. But I think if it's going to lead to other problems, and suddenly, yes, it's Dead Rock, and then it's curse words and all sorts of anatomical drawings in no time. The three major stairwells in the park, Texas Beach had murals. We did a mural on the 42nd Street Tower a year or two ago. That was done by some students, and then led by the teams in Richmond and Parks program, summer program. Students did that, and then we are planning a new mural for the 22nd Street Tower now. There had been one for a while, and then we fund some of the anti-graffiti work in the park, so we're paying people to go out there and paint over stuff. But that 22nd Street Tower, it's very high traffic and gets a lot of graffiti.
So don't tag the tower when there's a beautiful mural.
Yeah, I think generally people leave the murals alone.
Right.
But we'll see. And that's been an argument too, is do we want more murals in the park? Will that lead to less graffiti? I don't know the answer to that. I just, I hate for kids who have to see it. We were painting over graffiti in the park and my kids could read and they were asking what those words were. And I'm like, yeah, some people just do that.
Don't worry about it, right.
Yep.
I asked you about sort of, if you could snap your fingers, do one thing, what would it be? What about, I've got a friend in town, you have a friend who's coming in town, they know what you do for work. Like, what's the first place you take them in the park? What's your favorite, what's your go-to for a visitor?
It's a good question. I think for accessibility purpose and ease of getting down to the river, I love the 42nd Street entrance.
Okay.
Down the tower, out across the rocks. You skip, you've crossed the stepping stones, get out on a little island, and then you have access to all those rocks there.
Right.
I love that spot for being able to get pretty far out in the river and sort of feel the river. Pony Pasture is also a fantastic entry point for folks who, maybe aren't as adventurous to do the full North Bank Buttermilk loop, but still want to get down to the river. Right. And I think Pony Pasture has made its case for that. That's why it's always so busy. Right. And it's got
42nd Street's a good answer. I like that because it's obviously people know it, everybody does it, but you're right. In a couple of minutes, you're already into the wilderness and then out in the river.
Yeah, it's probably the closest you can be. You can feel like you're away from the population. It's park at the 42nd Street lot, rush down across, and then you're out there. And
you're out there.
And from that spot in the river, you can't see downtown, and upstream you can see the bridge, but that's it.
That's it.
And so you really feel isolated there, and I've always liked that.
Do you ever take friends or people to Pump House Park?
Pump House is a great place for visitors when you can catch it open. Friends of the Pump House is one of the...
I mean, like the area outside the Pump House itself is open. Or like
There's Pump House Park. Yep, you can access the park around it. You can view the building. They've got a great handicap accessible ramp now to get down to the park. If you haven't been there recently, it looks great.
And for people that don't know, that's right on the north side of the Nickel Bridge, right?
North side of the Nickel Bridge, very bottom of Bird Park. Right. Head all the way down to the bottom at Bird Park, and you'll hit the Pump House.
Is that something like you probably have a whole list of things, but if I gave you $10 million today, how cool would Pump House? I mean, you can make Pump House, the glory of Pump House would be amazing to recreate.
You can do a lot of Pump House. It's a really fantastic space, built in the 1880s, was just a public works building, and really designed to be by Colonel Cutshaw to be the pumped water from the river up to the Bird Park Reservoir.
Right.
But when they built it, they didn't have to make it look like a Gothic revival church.
Right.
They were just doing cool stuff at that time.
They were cooler then, yeah.
And they also, one of the coolest things that they have going there is the whole upper floor is an open air ballroom.
You want to walk? Oh,
yeah. So if you go down there, the upper floor is a ballroom, which was a place that held dances and public events and all kinds of cool things when that space was active up until sometime in the early 1900s when they stopped having events there and the new Pump House opened up.
Right.
Which is now 100 years old. The new Pump House is 100 years old now.
That's crazy.
So the old Pump House is pretty old.
Yeah, it's such an amazing. That's another place that I love taking out-of-towners to, not necessarily for the sort of like quintessential park experience, but just the whole whoa. Actually, in some ways, not even out-of-towners, like Richmonders.
Yeah.
A lot of Richmonders don't know about that place.
Yeah, we work with Friends of the Pump House. They're the
There's a separate Friends group for that?
They're a fiscally sponsored organization under Friends of the James River Park, so they're kind of a subgroup. They were started separately, but we've sort of adopted them and helped them along. We're actually working on a project with them right now to replace all the windows on the main floor, and you can see that work happening. It's probably going on today if you went down there.
Oh, wow.
So we've been doing window replacements there for about 2 years, right? A couple of years since we put they put the first ones in, and then we got a grant last year to do the rest of the first floor windows. So these great big windows, you're gonna be able to look into the Pump House all the way for the first time in a long time. Here is when that project is complete. The city also has in the budget for this year $500,000 for the Pump House roof, which is part of about a $2 million total between private and federal and city funds that's been put together to do the Pump House roof. Okay. And that project should start in the next couple of years too. The long-term goal right now, from what I understand and all the conversations I've been a part of, is to create access directly to that second floor ballroom, do as much restoration work of that space as we can, and get it open to the public as events and education space.
Oh, wow.
So create some kind of bridge straight off Pump House Drive right into the Pump House, work on the roof, restore that. We talked about adding bathrooms as part of that process, but then we found out that there isn't running water anywhere near. Okay. It's hundreds of yards to the nearest sewage or running water connection. So that's $10 million probably right there, just doing that. But I think, you mentioned $10 million. That you could really do a lot at a place like the Pump House with that kind of money and get it open to the public in a way that will make it better for people. Right now, it's beautiful. And there's limited use around tours and some structural things that happen there. The Friends of the Pump House offer tours.
So neat, architecturally, historically.
It's beautiful.
Such a cool place.
They've even done
canals right there.
Yeah, I think there's a cool story to be told there about the industrial history of Richmond, the way that it sat along the canal and the impact it had. They've actually worked with students from VCU to visualize. VCU engineering students built a 3D model of the pumps and how
they would have
worked in getting water up there, which is really cool to see.
That's cool. Do you tell me something that you've been there 4 years now. I've been coming to the park. I've probably been to every parcel over the years. Something that people might not know about the park: a historical fact, an animal. A visitation parcel that most people don't go. Wow me with something about the park.
Yeah, I think for me the most interesting history in the James River Park system is on Belle Isle.
Okay.
It's sort of the largest island in downtown Richmond. It's about 50-something acres.
Right.
That island has also changed a ton. The original land grant for that island, I think, was 30 acres or something. So over time, it's more than doubled in size because islands change.
Yeah, that's cool.
As you are familiar, islands change. And that size of that island's changed, and its uses have changed. People don't realize they go to Belle Isle today because it's been 30 years since there was any kind of industry there, 30, 40 years. They see a beautiful green space.
Right.
Well, most of that is overgrown industrial space.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, if you walk into the woods around the nail shed, which is the big long building that's there that everyone always asks about, that's just kind of a roof.
Yeah.
If you go anywhere past that into the woods, you'll start tripping over the building foundations of the steel mill that was there.
Okay.
Old Dominion Iron and Steel operated a massive plant
This
there.
is like mid-1900s.
Yep. Probably like late 1800s even, up
Into
through the
okay.
1960s and 70s. There's some
Okay.
pictures from the 1960s from the South Bank of the James looking at Belle Isle, and it's just one big factory.
Yeah.
And it was that big steel mill, and it had all these buildings and different components. So there's sort of this cool history of Belle Isle that goes back even further. So it became a steel mill after the Civil War. It was a camp during the Civil War, a notorious
prison camp. Yeah.
Confederate prison camp where U.S. soldiers were held, many of whom died. Before that, it also had an industry on it as well, and there were dozens of buildings out there. We worked with Tim Roberts, an architect, to take a look, or not architect, archaeologist, to take a look at some of the structures that were there before, and we counted dozens and dozens of buildings that were part of mills and other things that were on the island even before the Civil War.
Right.
And what I found coolest looking through that process, everyone's familiar with the hydro plant, which today sits on the south shore of Belle Isle as sort of a husk, big cement and steel building that sits there, big block, it's all tagged up. Well, that building's over 100 years old, but the infrastructure it sits on, the sluiceway that brought the water in, is 100 years older than that. We found that on maps going back to the early 1800s when there was a mill there. So all that infrastructure was built, and that power plant operated up, I believe, through the 1960s. So you have an industrial site that, when John Quincy Adams was president, started being used as a mill, and when Richard Nixon was president, around then is when it finally ceased operation. Different things, but that history on a place like Belle, and you walk around it and you think, oh, it's this beautiful natural space, but it has this really cool industrial history that you can barely see. If you know where to look, you can find it. But most people aren't there on there for that, and I think that's one of the coolest things about this. I think Mayo Island has a similar history with industry and
and recreation.
You
know about the ball field? There was like a minor league ballpark there. I mean,
there certainly was.
I love those layers.
Yeah, I'm not sure about all the stories about the ballpark. I know
like Babe Ruth played there, those kind of stories.
Yeah, I've heard many tales. Someone recently told me the bunt was invented there, but I don't believe that there's any historiography to back that up.
Right.
Yeah.
I know it's we've talked about a lot of the parcels, and it makes me it's amazing what your organization sort of like what falls under the penumbra, right, of the Friends of the James. So like thinking about that and knowing how much it's grown since you've been there, what does sort of success look like for the Friends specifically, for your organization in 5 years?
I think we take a look at the James River Park Master Plan. There's a lot of really great, a lot of meat still left on that bone. We've picked a lot of the low-hanging fruit off of that. Things like the Natural Resource Management Plan. We helped start the Ranger Program. We are
invasive species removal.
There's a lot of pieces of the James River Park Master Plan, including park expansion, that we are deeply invested in. I think in the short term, we're looking at some projects on Belle Isle. In the long term, in 10 years, 5 years, if we were a $5 or $10 million a year organization getting the park the resources it needed, that's a long way off. But I also look at a future where we're potentially in a more official public-private partnership with the city to maintain the park. That's a tough conversation to have because the city does do a great job. It just, like we were talking about, there's limited resources, and increasing the amount of funding that comes to the park through the tax base is not going to be an option. If people want a nicer James River Park system, and want to take care of the park the way we want it to be taken care of, we're going to have to look at growing our organization as a complement, a supplement to what the city's doing. And so I see a future where we work really closely with the city, continue to work closely with the city in the management of the park, and where we are able to bring in more resources than we are to support the park professionals who are making decisions every day about how the park's managed.
What's been the biggest challenge you've faced in your job in the last 4 years?
I think the biggest challenge has been getting the word out about our work and try and explain to people. It's complicated work to explain. I think there's a lot of people out there that just say, "Oh, why isn't the city doing this? Why isn't the city doing that?
Why do we need a friend?
Why are we writing you checks? Why are you paying for it?" I think it's a really tough position to come from. The easy answer is, well, cities have a lot of other things they got to pay for, so we're here to help. That's what a friend does. And so making that case to people has been tough. Getting attention, there's a lot of great causes out there. I worked in homeless services before. That's a great cause. There's the food bank in Richmond. There's, people only have so much money to give.
Right.
The James River Park system might be seen as a luxury for some people. So making the case that it's critical that we take care of this, not just for ourselves, but if we don't do something today about the invasive plants and we don't enact these natural resource management plans we have, there won't be a James River Park system in 50 years, or at least it won't look like this. It won't be as well taken care of as it is today if we aren't able to even make an investment. So, a bug, something.
You're good.
So our goal is to sort of instill that in Richmond and help continue to build that in Richmond. That the idea that we're planting trees today that our kids will sit under tomorrow, or that our grandkids will sit under, and the James River Park system is always going to be here. It's under a permanent conservation easement, so we need to take care of it now, so that our kids so that there is something to enjoy in the future.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was great.
Cool.
Josh, it's a big moment. Look at this.
Look at that.
The official Sharps Island pint glass.
That's awesome.
That's pretty sweet. What you made it. You ran the gauntlet of the interview.
Sure.
You did it.
It's a pleasant experience.
Congratulations. Now you get the pint glass, baby.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Let's go. Also the water.
It was. Yeah.
Pretty cold.